I would say most people probably drive by barns every day and don't think about how unique that barn may be, because that's really what you run into when you get out and start to see these barns up close. Hand-hewn beams, hand-hewn posts. They're really monuments, in my opinion, to farmers and farming. It's important that we save these.
This desire to celebrate and save Indiana's historic barns is shared by the members of the Indiana Barn Foundation, an all-volunteer advocacy group founded a decade ago. Part of the IBF's mission is to share that passion with the public through events like their annual barn tour. These driving tours allow barn owners, barn fans, and others to see a wide variety of historic structures in just one day. This year's tour took place in Miami County, and the first stop was the International Circus Hall of Fame, on the former grounds of the Wallace Circus Winter Headquarters. The Hall of Fame's 2 historic barns and grounds gave visitors a chance to experience a fascinating part of Indiana's past.
Those barns were very unique, built again for a very specific purpose. The barn that we had our headquarters in was mainly a repair barn, for instance, but of course had hay storage above.
The next stop for many was an equally unique barn, albeit on a significantly smaller scale. Known today as the Wallace Poor Barn, it stands out in large part because of the materials used to construct it.
There are not a lot of brick barns. There are a few, but even if you were making the bricks there, it's more expensive than building a wooden barn.
Just a few miles away, guests toured a working barn with a connection to a famous Peru native, the composer and lyricist Cole Porter. The property, named for one of Porter's early commercial successes, is home to beautiful gardens and a beautiful barn.
That barn was built a little bit later, into the 1900s. In the upstairs is just cavernous.
That cavernous upstairs was a product of the barn's time.
The baled hay that all of us know now is a relatively recent invention. 100 years ago, in the early 1900s, most hay was stored loose in these barns. So it took a really big area because loose hay is not nearly as compacted.
While hay became easier to store, farm machinery, especially in the 70s and 80s, became larger, and barns built for an earlier style and scale of farming were no longer useful. Because of that, countless barns have been lost, but others, like the Stein barn, have been given a new life.
Great example of what you can do with a barn for it to be useful, not really in an agricultural sense, but to make it useful for storage and just for kind of a really nice party barn and man cave.
In all, there were 7 barns on this year's tour, and one of the most popular stops was the Learning Lab at the Betzner Barn. There, Indiana Barn Foundation board member Randy Miles facilitated a conversation about barn preservation and restoration, similar to what the IBF offers through their in-person barn assessments.
He actually walked people through that barn and talked about some of the features, but some of the things that it needed.
And if that fits your budget and fits the criteria to maintain that vintage heritage barn, that's great.
We feel like that is a really helpful thing that we can do to tour participants without necessarily coming to their barn. I'd say 3 years ago, we'd get a request for assessment, maybe one every month or 2. We now have probably 3 or 4 weeks. We've had 3 since Saturday.
In addition to the tours and the increasingly popular assessments, the Indiana Barn Foundation hosts an annual meeting and provides $2,500 grants to assist with restoration efforts.
As you consider what it costs to fix these barns, $2,500 is not much. We look at it as if that's enough to encourage people to go ahead and do something, then there's value in that. We're never going to have the money to help everybody with their barn, but we do think we serve a valuable purpose because there's nobody else besides the Indiana Barn Foundation who is trying to find a purpose and is trying to give value to these heritage barns that we believe are really important to us across the state.